Hello there! Welcome back to Void Dwarf Studios, everyone, where today we go back into Age of Sigmar and we look at the Nighthaunt, and we continue looking into the kinds of units that you can bring to the tabletop. A quick thing I do need to talk about first though. Well, there's no other way to say this. I made a mistake in my previous video. The Glaive Wraith Stalkers, the wonderful skeletal horsey stabby people, they aren't battleline, so I need to apologise about that. I'm not really sure why I thought they were battleline. I think it's because I'm just so used to them swarming all over me when my partner and me play Age of Sigmar. So yeah, that's my mistake. And to make it worse, I had forgotten one of the units for battleline for the Nighthaunt. At least if you want to make a very cavalry fast heavy army, the Hex Wraith. And the Hex Wraith is particularly fun for me because it's a unit that existed in Warhammer Fantasy in a slightly different capacity, but not too dissimilar from what it does now. So I'm going to correct my mistake and talk about Hex Wraiths here, and then afterwards we're going to look into the, planned content for this video. So what is your average run-of-the-mill Hex Wraith doing in a Nighthaunt army? Well, the Hex Wraiths, who tend to be part of the Doom Riders, essentially the fast, more shock kind of cavalry area of the Nighthaunt army, these guys are, they appeared mostly in the realm of Siesh. These are manifestations of the Grim Reaper. Essentially, every time someone died in battle, these guys would ride out, they'd manifest, and claim the souls of before they, escape and go to Nagash. Once Nagash had control of these creatures, he essentially used them to harvest souls for himself. Each swing of their scythe doesn't necessarily cut you, it attacks your soul. So physical armor is virtually useless against these things. And since the Necroquake, they've more often than not been associated with the Nighthaunt because I guess Lady Olinda and Nagash have decided that these creatures do best amongst the Nighthaunt. And having a heavy shock cavalry is no small thing. These guys can ride over any terrain. In fact, terrain means nothing to them. They can ride on ice, water, hell, they can fly through the air riding on their skeletal flaming steeds. And that wonderful fire you see flickering all over their bodies, that is the remnants of the souls that they have claimed using their fantastic Reaper scythes. These guys are, they're your shock cavalry. You will employ them as such. So I wouldn't necessarily put them in the middle of your army. I would probably put them to one side and, try and do traditional tactics, like try and go flank people, and try and chase down and destroy weaker units, see if you can get a rear charge in, that's more or less how I would use these guys. Luckily at the moment for me, my partner only has 5 of them, because if you're in units or 10 or more, they're frankly terrifying. And you have the added bonus that you could in fact have these guys behind your units, and because of their ethereal ability and they don't get any penalties for terrain, you can just ride them through your own army and smack something in front of you. Yeah, these spectral Grim Reapers are no joke, no slouch. They were pretty nasty in Warhammer Fantasy, and they're still pretty nasty in Age of Sigmar. Just don't send them into something without help. Or if you are going to charge something, make sure you've got a good chance of killing it. Because these guys are relatively fragile. They don't have much in the way of armor, is what I'm trying to say. So charge something you're convinced you're going to kill, otherwise try and soften it up first before you send in these cavalry. Good. Now that's out of the way, back to your scheduled programming. In this episode we're going to go over the units you have that are considered other. They're not battle line, they're not necessarily behemoths, but these are the kinds of units that bring that extra flavour, punch, and utility to the army. And the first unit we're going to look at is one which just continues Nagash's general theme of, you didn't pay me proper respect, so I'm going to screw you over for all eternity, because I'm a little petty like that. Oh, God, I'm so glad Nagash isn't a real god. The Mormon Banshee. The Mimon... this is going to be one of those weird words to pronounce again. Mimon Banshees. I'm going to go with that. Mormon Banshees are practitioners of magic and life who were obsessed with obtaining Eldritch knowledge. and to the point of, well, everything else. They became self-absorbed, self-obsessed, and, well, many of them died in tragic and unfortunate ways. And Nagash decided that as these women didn't pay him proper respect, as, well, they became so obsessed with magic, they weren't so concerned about worshipping Nagash anymore, he decided that he would make it the only thing they ever desire in death. More magic. Except he'd always keep it just out of reach. These spirits, in their tattered robes and funeral shrouds, stalk throughout the land, seeking magic in all its forms and consuming it to try and sate their insatiable hunger. And yeah, Nagash has made sure that there is no way for them to ever sate that hunger. They can only see the world through the eyes of magic. So they can see the winds of magic, they can see people casting spells, they can see people who have magical potential. These are the things they hunt for and try to kill, with their chilled and cursed daggers. These are fantastic wizard killers. They tend to come in groups of 3 to 4, and you want to use them to kill wizards. These are definitely something you don't want to use against, like, say, a standard battle line. The best way to employ them is to, well, I keep repeating this, but this is really what they're for. You use them to counter magic. With their ability to more or less eat spells out of the air, and on top of that to essentially just murder any unfortunate soul who happens to be alone in the deep dark forest with magical potential, you will wish you were nowhere near these things because, well, yeah, they will eat you, body, soul and mind, and then they'll just fly off and try and consume something else. They are wretched creatures, obsessed with magic and life, and, well, Nagash made sure they became obsessed with it in death. And, yeah, sucks to be you if you're a Mormon Banshee. Now onto a unit that is just... Nagash continues his theme of I'm going to screw you over because I don't like what you're doing in life. The Dreadscythes. These really unfortunate women were once healers, and had devoted their lives to easing people's suffering and prolonging life as much as possible. This Nagash found very offensive. Any attempt to deny the great necromancer his souls puts him in a bit of a bad mood, shall we say. He doesn't tolerate interfering with his plans, or people trying to think that they can cheat or forestall death. So, Nagash would prepare a special reward for any of those people who he deemed were guilty of trying to prolong the living. He would reshape them, using baleful hexes, twisting their souls and changing them into, well, what you see in front of you. What once hands become long, bone-like scythes, now tools of murder. If you had been a gentle and caring soul in life, looking after the living, you became a blood-crazed, rage-filled killer. The hex that Nagash places on these souls is such that even the sight of blood or injuries can stir these creatures into a great rage. If these people in life were able to calm others and help them rest and relax, they became shrieking, fear-causing creatures. Unable to ever sate their bloodlust, these harridans just grow more and more vicious and violent the longer they're in combat. And, yeah, it's a really horrible end for people who actually were trying to do good in life. But, as Nagash sees it, you're trying to forestall death, which is his great plan, and you must be punished. And, well, yeah, this is a pretty sucky punishment. And these things are terrifying. You want to have them in fairly big groups, minimum of 10 models, and they will just carve up everything. They are great for slicing through horde units or mobs. They are amazing at just overwhelming and killing things. They're like your Chainghast on steroids, you know? Whilst the Chainghasts are a bit slower, and they still have lots of attacks, but they're not quite as speedy, these things are wicked fast, with even more attacks than the average Chainghast. And with the ability to simply just slice through everything in front of them, they're horrible. I don't like fighting these things at all. And with their abilities to essentially shriek so that they're harder to hit in combat, and their sides being able to actually cause potentially additional damage, Yeah. Kill these things. Kill them quickly with guns, cannons, flamethrowers, whatever. You're doing them a service. Our next unit is another unfortunate soul. If you haven't figured out the theme by now, you're never going to understand the Nighthaunt. Basically, yeah, it doesn't matter how you die, Nagash will find some fault in you and make you suffer for it for the rest of your life. The Bladegust Revenants are souls that met particularly grisly ends. We're talking about people who were choked to death, drowned, buried alive, slowly eaten, horrible, horrible deaths. And it's their last thoughts, their last frenzied desperation to stay alive, that last act of defiance to avoid death, that the Gash has decided to preserve and essentially keep them in that constant state of frenzy and desperation for the rest of their eternal life. And to make matters worse, he gives them a longsword known as a Tomb Greatblade, and basically he just puts them into groups of other unfortunate souls, and they go out in a spinning whirlwind of death. Although all their other senses are numbed, Bladegust Revenants can feel the presence of what they imagine to be the people who put them in those horrible fates to begin with. And because of that, they attack anything and everything that's alive with a viciousness that's quite uncanny, honestly. And if there's any nearby spirit torment or a chain rasp horde, these creatures will fight even more ferociously, as they view these Chainghast horde as being captives themselves and can, I guess, sympathize? Might be too strong a word, but something along those lines. Bladegust Revenants are fantastic units. They operate in a similar manner to your Dreadscythes Harridans in that they are great for chopping through large units of mobs, but they are even better when they're surrounded or near spirit torments and chainghasts. They essentially get to reroll all failed hit rolls when they are within 12 inches of a spirit torment or chainghast. This is because those who they see are in captivity, they just fight all the fiercer to assist them, which is an odd one, but I guess it's related to their final moment of desperation to be free, and sympathizing at the unfortunate fate of the chainghast. What makes these guys extra unfun to have in your face is the fact that they can charge and retreat. So you can basically just charge these guys in, fight in your turn, then when it's your next turn, you can retreat them and charge back in. And in addition to this, they gain an extra attack whenever they make a charge. So their 2 attacks, not bad at all, becomes 3. And when you've got a unit of usually a minimum of 10, yeah, that's a lot of attacks. And especially as there are other ways to buff their attacks with other characters, and the ability to reroll failed hits if they're close to spirit torments and chainghasts. Yeah. This final fight of desperation to stay alive is ironically what keeps them tormented forever in death. And yeah, if you can possibly avoid getting to close combat with these things, I would suggest it. At the very least, I would try and suggest whoever's fighting these things to try and have the upper hand first. Like, thin them down with some guns, magic, all that standard stuff. The Nighthaunt army is so good in close combat, and their magic phase is equally difficult to counter. But in their shooting phase, nigh non-existent in shooting. So this is where you've got to try and lower the number of models that get into close combat with you. And Games Workshop released a special character who essentially is a bigger, badder Bladegust Revenant, but he's in a unit by himself. Now, the last unit we're going to look at in this video, which is the only one that doesn't really fit into any real category, is also the only behemoth you get, is also the only counts as behemoth unit you get in the Nighthaunt army. And a small part of me regretted buying this for my partner for Christmas, because it's Yeah, well, it's scary, and it does unpleasant things. The Black Coach. This is another unit that had its origins back in Warhammer Fantasy, although slightly different now. The Black Coach is essentially an ethereal carriage with a corpse inside. A corpse that needs to absorb magic in order to, well, come back to life. Typically, this is either a vampire, or a soul blight, as they're now known in Age of Sigmar, or some kind of necromancer, who is trying to regain magical energy and, try and restore themselves. They might have suffered a terrible injury, or maybe Nagash decided that it would be funny just to lock him in a box and, turn on the absorb magic button, Nagash can be all kinds of fun like that. Pulled by spectral steeds, and typically it's driven by a cairn wraith, these things are basically there to absorb the magical energy around them and channel it out into all kinds of interesting effects. So the way it works is the Black Coach, every single battle round gets to roll 3 dice. For every dice that comes up as a 4+, it gains a level of power, and each one of these levels stacks. Okay, this is the thing that makes this unit quite terrifying. So at your first level, you get to heal D3 wounds to any Nighthaunt unit. That's a pretty good starting point. Second level, you get to reroll failed hit rolls of 1 for melee weapons for this model. And in addition, the Black Coach can now run and charge. Okay, in addition to being able to heal D3 wounds to itself or other Nighthaunt models. So this is already starting to get a little bit worrying. Third level, after this model completes a charge move, you can pick an enemy unit within 1 inch and roll the dice. And on a 2+, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. Okay, so this is already starting to get a little ridiculous. At the 4th level, this model can retreat and charge. Yeah, okay, so it can now run and charge, repeat and charge, heal itself, heal other units, and it gets to reroll failed hit rolls of 1. Okay, yeah, right. And at its final level, you can, in your hero phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches, and on a 4+, do D3 mortal wounds. Okay, so let's just say, for example, you've slammed yourself into an unfortunate unit. You've already done D3 mortal wounds to it in your at the end of your combat phase, and then at the beginning of your turn, you can do an additional D3 mortal wounds on a 4+. Oh, and just for good measure, the cairn wraith with his scythe can reroll failed hit rolls if the unit has 5 or more models in it. Yeah. Oh, and every unmodified hit roll of 6 from the cairn wraith's scythe inflicts automatically 2 mortal wounds. Oh, and the lovely ghost things on the side of it that are carrying the various artifacts for the unfortunate person inside, yeah, they can do mortal wounds too. Good golly grief almighty, this thing's got potential. And with 12 wounds and a 4+ save, yeah, it's not dying quickly, not unless you devote something quite powerful to it. Yeah, this is, yeah, kill this thing. Kill it quickly, because if this thing starts to power up and achieves its maximum potential, it will stay at that maximum potential. Like, once it's there, you don't need to roll for power anymore, There's no... Once you get to the 5th level, this thing becomes nigh on ridiculous. Oy. And I do love the Black Coach. I loved it in Warhammer Fantasy for the idea that your Vampire Lord, for example, has, taken a beating somewhere and gone, oh, I really need to tan myself, I need to absorb some lovely death magic. Let's just stick myself inside of a... Sorry, that's the dog having a little shake. Stick myself inside a Black Coach, let me be carried around across a battlefield where there's wanton murder and slaughter everywhere, and I'll absorb all the death magic around. And, yeah, after that little stint, gets up feeling right as rain. Oy, yeah, these things are fun. And the model is also gorgeous, particularly the new model. It's a fiddly old thing to build, but it's so pretty. It's just so pretty. I'm sorry for this rather short episode. I've actually managed to get myself some additional employment, so I'm gonna maybe be a little bit more sporadic with these videos. Don't worry, I'm still intending to do at least 2 a week. Someday getting to do this full time is still my aim, as is making narrative campaigns, but those are infinitely more complicated and, well, require a lot more time to set up. But they may not come out every Wednesday and Sunday, but I will be trying to. And I noticed that I had a response from my Eldar video to do one about the Void Dragon. Overgrowth Madness, thank you very much for your suggestion. I will crack on with that ASAP. It may not come out this week, but it will definitely come out next week. Right. I hope you all have a great day wherever you are. Please continue to like and subscribe, and to all my members, thank you so much for your subscriptions. It really means the world to me, and it's been wonderful to see the channel growing and getting some feedback from everyone. I'm genuinely enjoying it, and I hope you're enjoying this content too. Like I said, like and subscribe, spread the word, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, everyone.